I got to move my laundry out of the way at the very least. And this blanket that my kids use. Hello. Is that going to work otherwise? Let's bring it a little bit this way. Like that, maybe. Hi. Whatever your expectations are for this live stream, beyond it being about me signing my name, lower them, because I got a lot of signatures to get through today, my friends. So I just, I should have put this in the video info, but the Anthropocene Reviewed book is available for pre-order now, and every copy of the first edition in the US and Canada will be signed by me. Maybe that one will get bound into your book, maybe one of the other ones. Probably one of the other ones, statistically speaking. So I wanted to do this live stream because I needed something to kick me in the productivity butt. It's been a little bit of I just finished. I've been on deadline. I kind of still am on deadline, but I've been dealing with this intense deadline around the Anthropocene Reviewed book, wanting to get my big revision done. Some of you won't know my work, but I usually write novels. I've written 5 novels, and now I'm writing my first book of nonfiction, which is intimidating, and like working on it over the last month has been both fun and scary, I would say, in equal parts. And I'm signing every copy of the first printing, which I thought was going to be 150,000, which is about how many copies of about how many sheets I signed for The Fault in Our Stars, one of my previous books. But then I just got a call from my publisher. It was a good call in a lot of ways, but one of the things I learned is that I'm actually going to be signing 250,000 sheets, which is great because it means more people are interested in the book, and that is, of course I want people to want to read the book and everything, but also that is a difference of 100,000 sheets, which is about 200 hours of work, which is about 5 weeks if you do it 8 hours a day. So the book comes out on May 18th. And again, it's available for pre-order now. I'm not very satisfied with that signature, so I'm going to try to make it better with a little DFTBA. And May 18th is not that far away, and I've got to get these sheets to the printer in Pennsylvania in time for them to actually. So what happens is they take each one of these sheets and they pull. There's a machine that pulls off the top one and puts it into the book so that it gets bound into the rest of the book while the book is being printed. It's called a tip-in sheet. Hold on, I'm getting a text message. It's probably somebody who's like, "We can't hear you." Oh no, it's just Marina. It's just Marina. It's just my best friend in the world. So I've got to get the tip-in sheets to Pennsylvania in plenty of time for them to actually print the books and then send the books out to bookstores and the nice individuals who have pre-ordered them. So I'm under a little bit of a time crunch, and the problem with signing is that when you're signing your name, when you're doing any repetitive task, actually 250,000 times or 150,000 times, the same basic rule applies. When you're doing any repetitive task, there's not that much efficiency to be gained. Like I've signed my name over 500,000 times in the last 10 years. I know how to sign it. I'm really good at it. I've put in my 10,000 hours. I don't think that I'm going to get any better at signing. I've got, and so I've got it down to the fastest, most comfortable way that my hand can do this sustainably. I don't think I'm on the edge of some major discovery that will shorten my signature by a stroke or anything. So it's just really it's just putting in the hours now. There's nothing else to do really. Listen to podcasts, sit in my basement and think. So I folded the laundry today, which is an accomplishment, but I did not sign very much, which is really like my core job right now. So I do hope that I do hope people like this book. It's so weird. I mean, it's so weird to write a book of essays where each of the essays ends like I give Kentucky Bluegrass 2 stars or whatever. I don't know, but it's been a lot of fun changing it into a book and adding new essays and rewriting old essays to make them feel like I feel now has been very interesting and fun and illuminating. And I've learned a lot about how this last year has felt for me, I guess. Sort of by an accident of history, the Anthropocene Reviewed became a podcast, which started out as a series of essays in podcast form about living in the human-centered planet, and then it became a series of essays about living in the human-centered planet in a historical moment where single strands of RNA have a tremendous amount of control over what happens to individual humans, but also to like our collective story. And that's always been the case. Strands of RNA have always been really important historical actors, but obviously in the last year, a strand of RNA has maybe been the most important historical actor. I'm not sure that there's any individual or force that's been as powerful in reshaping the human story as that little SARS-CoV-2 virus has lately, anyway. So, incorporating that into the book and thinking about what that means for this weird ongoing phenomenon that we have as a species, which is that we are incredibly powerful. We choose which species live and which species die to a great extent, not with complete control, but we certainly, the choices that we make around habitat have huge impacts for other species and for us. We are such a profoundly powerful species that we are shaping the climate in ways that a single species hasn't, at least in a very long time. And yet we are also like remarkably sort of at our core, unbelievably frail and temporary. We're just Earth stuff trying to sustain a departure from chemical equilibrium as long as we can, as well as we can. And this is a weird thing to be the most powerful species, maybe in the history of our planet, certainly in the recent history of our planet, but not to be powerful enough to be able to save the people we love, or to be powerful enough to choose how we change the climate of the Earth, or to be powerful enough to protect the biodiversity of Earth, which we all, or most of us, want to protect in the abstract, but when it comes down to making the concrete decisions that might actually do that, we're either unable or unwilling to. It's just a very strange time to be a person, and maybe they're all strange times to be a person, but the Anthropocene Reviewed book, I guess, is my attempt to chart some of those strangenesses, especially those places where the big strangenesses of human life hit my little life, my little vulnerable life. So yeah, it's been a really fun, interesting, at times painful period of reworking pre-existing essays and writing new ones. Lots of new ones about various things. It's funny, I said on the last episode of the podcast, or one of the last episodes of the podcast, like I said what some of the new essays were going to be about, and then I ended up not writing a bunch of those and instead writing other ones. I was like, I don't want to write about this. I want to write about the precipitation phenomenon known as wintry mix. So I did. But yeah, there's a lot of new essays in it too, and but honestly, like writing the new ones was kind of in some ways easier than rewriting some of the pieces that had appeared on the podcast, but that I needed to like rework for book form. And then some of the ones that I thought were definitely going to end up in the book are not, just because they don't work for me on the page, which happens. So yeah, it's been a real education. Sarah and I were talking. This is not, the Anthropocene Reviewed book is not totally dissimilar from Sarah's book. Like my wife Sarah wrote a book called You Are an Artist, and it also gathers around 50 different topics, and parts of it were based on her project with PBS Digital, the art assignment, and so it was a real. You feel like you have a start when you're working on a nonfiction book that has its roots in something that you did in a different medium, but then when you're actually doing the work, you realize like I didn't have as big of a start as I thought. Some of the essays are almost identical to the manner in which they appeared in the podcast, but a lot of them I felt like I had to expand or change, or I'd like learn different things, and I also like in the course. I mean, there's one critical thing that happened, which is that in the course of writing the podcast, like I started to think very differently about the way that human life works, I guess, and the way that change and innovation really happen. And so some of the early stuff in the podcast is really based on, telling lives of heroic or noteworthy individuals, big focus on individual stories. And some of that's because like I know that, we all like individual stories, and it seemed like that was a good podcast idea. But, the truth is that almost, there's a reason that Sir Isaac Newton and Edmund Halley lived in the same time and in the same place. It's not coincidence. It's not luck, right? Like Isaac Newton had to be living when he was living in order to make the discoveries. Or discoveries isn't even really the right word. We need a different word for discoveries in order to have his participation in knowledge building, the participation in knowledge building that he had. Like in some way, like Newton was extremely important, and I don't mean to like denigrate his contributions to human learning at all. But if it hadn't been for all of these far more efficient ways of passing on information, like like the Royal Society and the publications of the Royal Society that allowed for people to exchange what they were learning or challenge each other's learning. If it hadn't been for that stuff, if it hadn't been for those institutions and those systems and the systems of knowledge building that were being built up around Newton and Halley and Robert Hooke and many others, then it wouldn't have happened. And so we end up like crediting these individual geniuses when what we should really be celebrating, like the thing to celebrate, and this is much harder to do, I know, but like the thing to celebrate is this system that found a way to establish knowledge and build upon it, was really what was critical. And that's why, there was so much cool stuff going on in the 17th century in terms of discoveries. But also, you can't separate that cool stuff that was going on from the other stuff that was going on that was enriching those communities, like most notably these systems of extractive capitalism that had really, really high profit margins and allowed for people to become wealthy and allowed for states to become wealthy. And the reason they had high profit margins was because of their, enforcement of enslavement or other, colonialist labor practices. So in the book, I've tried, not always with complete success, to write about not just, I certainly write a lot about individuals because I still find individuals interesting and important, but like I tried to write about a little bit more about systems too. Like in the end, like by the end of the Anthropocene Reviewed, I was writing this way. Like I wrote one about the QWERTY keyboard. That's about how the keyboard, the typewriter wasn't really invented by one person or even by like 5 people. It was really invented by many thousands of people. And how like the light bulb is cool and everything, but what's really cool is an electricity grid. And like we're all obsessed with like who invented the light bulb, but we don't spend much time talking about who invented the electricity grid because it doesn't allow us to have a fight between Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla. It forces us to have a fight between Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla, and like essentially all of humanity. So yeah, that stuff actually doesn't play that big of a role in the book. It's just something that I've been thinking about today. All right, I have to stack these papers, so I'm going to look at your questions and come up with some topics for the next 300 sheets of paper. Hopefully you're still there. But if you're not, that's okay. I won't be mad. It's also possible that you can't hear me and I'm just sort of mumbling to myself, which is pretty realistic to what it's actually like when I'm signing. I could also just sign in silence, You'd probably prefer that. You have homework to do or other stuff going on. Let's see. What's behind the choice of the green pen? That's very good. Can I pre-order the book? Great question. What socks are you wearing? Oh, they're just Argyle socks. Okay. Those were good questions. And can you talk about your awful high school grades? They weren't all awful, to be fair. Let's not over mythologize it. Okay, so can you pre-order the book? Let's start there. And why do I use green markers? Good questions. So a while back, so this is going to get highly technical and nerdy just to prepare you. The socks are just Argyle socks. I wear Argyle socks every day. I'm going to start wearing non-Argyle socks now that I'm a member of Hank's Awesome Socks Club, but my ambition is to have an Awesome Socks Club that's just for Argyle sock enthusiasts like myself someday. So Sharpie has many different colors. In fact, I think oh God, my neck hurts. Here, I think I do. This is like quite a helpful visual instruction guide. So this is the most common multicolor pack of Sharpies. It's a 12 pack. There's a lot to recommend the 12 pack. The biggest things to recommend it are this color, which is sort of teal. I don't know the extent to which you can see that, but it's their sort of teal color that's between green and light blue. And then this color, which is sort of, I don't know, like maroon. It's their color between red and purple, and it's really good. These 2 Sharpies are really, really good, and you cannot buy them in like 12 packs of just this color. You can only get them, at least so far as I know, inside the Sharpie 12 count pack. Sarah usually, or like people buy me Sharpie 12 count packs all the time because they think that I like them, and I do like them. They're great. But they have 2 colors I can't use at all. Brown, like if you sign in brown, it looks so much like poop. It just doesn't work. And yellow, which like doesn't show up really. And then I also just find the orange to be a little bit violent, nauseating. Like I don't like looking at it. And so I end up only using the other like 2, 4, I end up using like 9 of the 12 Sharpies. And then we have a huge collection of yellow, brown, and to a lesser extent, orange Sharpies scattered about the house. It takes like, for me, because I don't like to sign until, I like to sign as with a Sharpie only as long as I feel like the line is really clean. There's a certain point at which, like, the Sharpie is still very usable and there's definitely still ink coming out of it, but it's not providing like the clean line that I'm looking for anymore. And so I just switch Sharpies because I figure, you know, this is a expensive and time consuming operation. I might as well enjoy my Sharpies. And so I sign about like 600 or 700 sheets per Sharpie before I feel like it's just not, the line isn't clean enough anymore. But an interesting thing, and I've never heard Sharpie admit this in public, but they don't really talk that much about the science behind Sharpies. So, I mean, the first reason why I use green is because it's my last name and my signature looks sort of like I'm just spelling out John, and then it's kind of, you know, like a little bit of a whatever, a little bit of a funny joke. There's other reasons though. One is that I find it to be an attractive color. Another is that the 12 packs of green are available for less, at least like I'm able to get them for less than I can get 12 packs of blue or purple or red. I also just like, I mean, I like the way it looks on the page a little more. You could make a case for purple because it's sort of the color of the Anthropocene Reviewed, but I don't know that it'll be the color of the book cover because there isn't a book cover yet. I don't know what the cover will look like. But I don't know. I like green. So that's one reason. The other big reason is that there is a difference in the quality of the line between different colors of Sharpies. And when I say this, like, people sometimes look at me like I'm crazy. I mean, you know, but there is. So the green holds it holds a thin line longer, both blue and purple. And I assume this is related to like something in the ink itself, something in the way that the, you know, ink gets distributed. They both become both blue and purple become much thicker lines much sooner. So like blue and purple the line starts to really get pretty wide and a little blotty for me at like 200 or 300 signatures, whereas green is almost always reliable, like right through 600, 700. And you almost never get that sort of like blotty or inconsistent looking line. And I always feel like the ones on the blue, with the blue and purple Sharpies after those first couple hundred, like they just look, I mean, look, none of these signatures are beautiful. None of them look good. I don't have an attractive signature. And, you know, and I understand that. I understand that, like, we're not trying to recreate the Mona Lisa here or anything. But I have a way that I like it to look, and I spend a lot of time looking at this doodle, you know, and I like it to be a certain way. In fact, like a huge percentage of the time that I'm signing, all I'm really thinking about is is this one good? Yeah, it's pretty good. So then is this one going to be good? That one is not as good. And that's a bummer. So sometimes I put DFTBA below the ones that aren't that good, or the ones that are like really imperfect, just so that people will be like, oh, well, I got a crap signature, but at least it says DFTBA on it. Can you pre-order the book? It depends on a lot of factors. I mean, the short answer is yes. You can go to any place where you pre-order books, and you can either type in the name of the book, which is the Anthropocene Reviewed, or you can ask your friendly local bookseller or librarian to pre-order it for you. And and that works. But if you are outside of the US and Canada, it is difficult / maybe impossible to pre-order a signed copy. The reasons for this have to do with international copyright law and treaties that publishing companies and countries have signed with each other about who can access what intellectual property shared on what mediums and blah, 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 blah. So I'm sorry if you live outside of the US and Canada and you were hoping to get a signed copy, because I definitely can't guarantee one to you. But inside the US and Canada, it should not be hard at all to pre-order a signed copy. In fact, it should be impossible to pre-order an unsigned copy, unless you're pre-ordering the audiobook. I'm not going to somehow magically sign an audiobook that's delivered to you digitally. Or I guess the ebook. But yeah, that's the deal with that. I wish that it were possible to sign international exports, and I am going to be signing like a certain number of the UK edition, but it's just not, it's not always practical. If you live outside the United States, I know a lot of people will want to read the book in English, but if you live outside the US in a place where it's translated, I would personally rather you read it. Well, it's up to you, but I think there's a lot of value to reading something in your first language, for me anyway. Also because it supports publishers in your community and translators in your community, which is really important. You know, like I've had early in my career, my books were much more popular in Northern Europe than they were in the US. And so I would travel usually to Germany. And I would go to Germany and I would do school visits there, which were always a little awkward because I don't speak much German and a lot of those kids didn't speak much English, but we did our best. And, you know, if it hadn't been for the support of my German publisher in those years, it would have been very difficult for me to make a living writing. You know, this was in the, sort of the first year or two of Vlogbrothers. First year, like the year before Vlogbrothers started, and then the first year or two after we started Vlogbrothers. And those, you know, having a good publishing ecosystem in languages other than English is really important. So I always try to encourage that because I'm very grateful to the people who publish my work in translation and to the people who translate it. And I want, you know, I want that to continue to be a good job in the future. Like my Dutch translator, Alide, and my German translator are both legit much better writers than I am. I know that they're better writers because I read my reviews in German and I'm always like, geez, God, I mean, Sophie must be doing an amazing job to make them think that I'm this good. Much better than my reviews in English. So there's only one possibility, which is that it's Sophie. But this book will be coming out in many other countries. I think it's coming out in the UK, France, Germany, places like that. Most. It's also, I think it's gonna come out in Portuguese in Brazil. It'll come out in Spanish in Latin America. It'll come out most places eventually, but it may take a little while. It's a different kind of book, so it's a different kind of publishing. I've never published in the world of publishing for grown-ups, which is largely an artificial distinction in my mind, but not in the mind of publishers. So it's definitely a different world for me. All right, I'm gonna grab some more questions. Or maybe I'll just shut up and sign. It's a nice ASMR sound. You know, it always feels to me like it's the beginning of a song, like the beginning of like the intro rhythm, like. And when I'm going right, these are a little bit. When the pages are not perfectly aligned, it's actually hard to grab the next one. But when they are, like when they're just like perfectly fanned out a little bit, you can just grab them very consistently. And then it kind of does become a bit of a bass line because it's so rhythmic and so consistent. So yeah. Okay, I'm gonna answer some questions. Okay. This is a nice background noise for essay writing. Maybe I'll just do that. Maybe I'll just do it. Maybe I'll just, yeah. John, say no, you don't have to do this. Oh, I know I don't have to do it, but I'm going to. I made a commitment. Yeah. Why are you wearing jeans? I'm not. We can talk about that though. Okay. It's a lot of questions. All right. That's too many questions for me to answer. I don't know how many people are in the chat, but it feels like a lot. So I'm not wearing jeans. I'm wearing khakis pants. Why am I wearing them? I don't know. I woke up this morning and I was like, I want to not wear athleisure for the first time in a week. I've been wearing a lot of like sweatpants and long sleeve t-shirts. I've actually been thinking, it's probably gonna have to wait till after the Project for Awesome, but I've been wanting to make a video about how I thought that my sense of fashion had sort of become fully codified and that I was, going to dress the same way for the rest of my life. And I think part of this was caught up in like thinking that that's what adulthood is, that adulthood is signing this or dressing the same way. It's like settling on your way of dress and then keeping it going for the rest of your life. And the pandemic has really thrown that completely upside down. And now I wear very different clothes. And it's made me think about fashion a lot. And some of the ways that I used to dismiss fashion or minimize its importance have really been thrown in my face by the pandemic, because I realized that like wearing different kinds of clothes, it can be a way of expressing yourself differently, and even imagining yourself differently, understanding yourself differently. So that's been a cool thing to learn up close for me. Like, yeah, so I might make a video about that. But I usually wear athleisure now. Why do I wear a coat when I'm inside? I mean, I guess I'd throw the question back at you. Why doesn't everyone wear a coat when they're inside? It's not hard. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, it's not an encumbrance. It's not a misery to wear a coat when you're inside. And so like, if you can wear a coat when you're inside and it's winter and you can lower the thermostat by like 5 or 6 degrees, which saves you like potentially like a couple $100 a month, it just, and like makes it a little easier to live, in my case, with a truly reprehensible carbon footprint, then yeah, I should. It's like literally the least I can do. Yeah. I don't know. I've always preferred it, especially down here, because like in the basement, I don't really know if this is true for all houses, but in our house, like the upstairs right now is like totally comfortable, pants and shirt weather. But man, down here in the basement, it's like it's a whole different ecosystem. So yeah, that's the other reason, is that I'm I'm in the basement on a cold and snowy day here in Indianapolis. I'm very excited for the Project for Awesome, which is coming up in 11 days. Some of you will not know what the Project for Awesome is, or will never have participated in it before. People in comments can tell you more about it, but it's a 48-hour live stream fundraiser and charity extravaganza. We did not do it last year because we were rescheduling, and also 2020 just, you know, as you may be aware, there were some disruptions. That was the least of it, but there were some disruptions. But we're really excited to do the P4A this year, see how it goes, and it should be a lot of fun. It's an opportunity to, you know, do something that I think is really important, which is raise unrestricted funds for charities that are doing really good work. So often charities that know where their need is end up having their purse strings tied by donors who may have, you know, one pet issue or another. And the Project for Awesome raises money and for charities, and then says to the charities, you know where to spend this, which I think is cool. I should say that, like, that doesn't mean that I think that, you know, raising restricted funds is always a bad idea. That's what we've done with the Maternal Center of Excellence in the Kono district in Sierra Leone, but that was Partners in Health asking us to raise those restricted funds, which I think is a little different. We didn't come to them and say we want to help you build a hospital. They came to us and said, we need your help building a hospital. And we said, oh, great. And that has been truly, truly probably the most fulfilling, personally for me, the most fulfilling thing that's happened during the 14 years that we've been making videos together, is seeing this community, even after all this time, come together with such immense energy and goodwill and generosity, even in this most difficult period of human history. Well, definitely not the most difficult period in human history. I just meant like this extremely difficult period in recent human history. It doesn't even rank in the top, you know, there have been some bad periods in human history. But what I was saying is that, like, you know, in times like this, it's very easy to turn inward, to look, you know, at your community, especially when there's great need. And, like, you know, Sarah, I'm sure that this is the case for many of y'all too. Like, Sarah and I see intense need in Indianapolis, and we feel, you know, we feel a responsibility to answer those calls where and when we can. And but I really worried that with all the stuff that's going on, and with so much, you know, putting aside, with so much suffering and so much loss and so much dislocation, that, you know, trying to raise $25 million amid all of that would just become completely impossible. And what's happened instead is that every single month, more people have joined in the project with Partners in Health and become monthly donors or made big gifts to the matching fund, and it really is just incredible. So it's wonderful to see. There's of course a long way to go. Like, breaking ground, which will happen in a couple months, does not represent the end. Of course, it represents the very, very, very beginning. And you know, we've made Hank and I have made a long-term and open-ended commitment to systemic strengthening of the healthcare system in Kono district. And so we understand that that's a long-term thing, but what a wonderful beginning. I'm really excited. So, okay, I think I'm going to shut up for a while and just sign until I'm done with this little stack. I wish there was a way, like, doesn't Twitch have a way that you, like, the comments get, like, read to me in my ear or something? Or people can like pay $1 to have I don't know. It seems like that should be doable. I guess I could also just like hire one of my children to moderate the chat, but I don't want to do that. That was a terrible one. Tried to make it better with the spiral. Okay. I mean, the pen's starting to, I'll just give you an example of what I mean by showing you what a blue pen looks like. So, and I realize that like the relative length of different color Sharpies being slightly different is like not an issue that matters to literally anyone on earth but me. But so this is like probably since I started, let me look, hold on. This is like, that's probably like around, this is probably like around 600. And you can see this is the last one that I did. And you can see like it's very slightly in the J part. It's starting to get a little bit, like the line is a little less steady. And if you look really, really closely, you can see that like in there, there's some, it actually doesn't even show up really in 720p, but like there's a little bit of, there's just a little bit of the line not being totally, totally steady, which is, or like totally consistent all the way through, which in some ways, like probably, I mean, insofar as anybody ever looks at these things for longer than 3 seconds and says like, oh, cool, it's signed, it's probably like good because it looks less like a robot signed it, which, you know, like is one of the main things that I want. Like, I don't want someone to be like, oh, I can't tell if a robot signed this or if it's a stamp or if it was a real marker. And so in that sense, it's like good that there's a little inconsistency to it, but I just don't like it. Like, whatever. It's me and it's my weird project and I've got to enjoy what there is to enjoy about it. I'm going to look for some questions. Is he wearing a jacket inside? Oh my God, why is it weird? Normalize wearing jackets inside. Why wouldn't you wear a jacket inside? Why would you unnecessarily heat your home? But yes, I'm wearing a jacket inside. It's apparently called feathering. There's some feathering, which I don't love. So that's the deal. But I'm gonna okay, I'm gonna go I'm gonna read some questions. The questions are coming. Why would I turn the heat up and spew carbon dioxide into the atmosphere when I could just literally like put on a very comfortable garment? Okay. 3,000 people are, oh, don't tell me 3,000 people are watching. That's super stressful. I don't want to think about that. Oh, wow. He can talk. I know. It's weird. Okay. Are you going to change colors? Just signing blank papers. Okay. I'm just going to explain what's going on and how I avoid getting carpal tunnel syndrome and why I'm doing this. And I'm going to stop talking about the jacket issue. Okay. John, I have to know if you've played Dungeons and Dragons. Okay. I'll try to cover all of these things. Great. So, first off, for those of you who are new here, I am wearing a jacket because I'm in my basement and it's cold, because I don't crank the heat up, because why would I? Secondly, we're now going to see what it's like to sign 600 with a blue Sharpie instead of a green Sharpie, and you'll see immediately that there's a dramatic difference. This is, again, not important in the scheme of things, but it is quite a dramatic difference. And it just doesn't feel as good to sign. I mean, the first few feel amazing. Like, that one was awesome. Have I ever played Dungeons and Dragons? Yes, I've played Dungeons and Dragons quite a bit. I am, in fact, or I should say I was until recently, the dungeon master for my kids' D&D group. But we finished our adventure, and one of the other dads took over as dungeon master, partly because he's really good at it, and I really appreciate it, and he's a great storyteller. And also just because I was under a lot of deadline pressure because of this book that I'm signing copies of. So yeah, it's something that I really enjoy, and that's a great bonding thing, a chance to like tell stories to my kids that they know are just for them, and that makes it really special for us. So that's, I think, all I'll say about it. Somebody else asked what these sheets are going to do. I mean, nothing is the short answer. But I'm signing every copy of the first printing of the US and Canadian edition of my new book, which is called The Anthropocene Reviewed, which is a book of essays in which I rate different facets of the Anthropocene on a 5-star scale. So it's really just an excuse for me to try to write about what it feels like to be alive in this moment, and to experience the weird places where my small little life runs up against or connects with the big forces in Earth life. Whether that's writing about sunsets or writing about cave art or writing about the film Penguins of Madagascar. I'm trying to explore the ways where so it's a sort of memoir, and it's a sort of series of essays about nature and the relationship between people and the natural world, and how, I guess at its core, we think of there being a relationship between people and the natural world. And when we do that, we think of people being somehow separate from the natural world. what I'm concerned with, or like interested in writing this book, is reestablishing that, you know, when we look down at the ground, we are not looking at Earth. We are not like ethereal human souls looking at Earth. We are Earth looking at itself. That's the thing that I think we often get wrong about being alive. So yeah, it's just a lot of different essays that explore relationships with the way that humans are interacting with the world, and the way that the world is interacting with humans. And because of when it was written, it is also very much a book about understanding what if any, or thinking about trying to figure out what, if anything, I can say or understand about living in a time when a single strand of RNA shut down large swaths of the world and killed millions of people in a 12-month period. Somebody also asked if I could talk about my terrible grades in high school. They weren't that terrible, just to defend myself for a moment. I got very bad grades in 11th grade and 9th grade, whatever. I never got great grades. There were a variety of reasons for this. I mean, one thing, I probably now would have been diagnosed with like some form of dyscalculia. It was really, really hard for me to make the jump to abstract mathematics, to make the jump to like algebra and so-called college math. In fact, I mean, this is something I think about a lot, because at most big state universities in the US, you have to pass some kind of college math class to get most degrees. And like, the truth is that I could not now, and could not have then, passed such a college math class. And the only reason I was able to graduate from college is because I was able to go to a college where that wasn't a requirement. And like, I think I've done okay I think I've done okay. And like, I think that, like, I'm not sure I deserved my bachelor's degree, but like, I think I probably did. And I did well in school. I did well in college. I mean, you know, like, I got good grades in college. And so I think what happened is that in high school, I had a lot of other problems. Learning was a problem for me, especially around math. Abstract thinking in general was a problem for me. It was difficult for me to understand how figurative language worked, how it was difficult for me to understand abstract historical forces. You know, it was much easier for me to understand history in the context of human beings making a series of human decisions than it was to understand, you know, history as you know, these big systems interacting with each other, and, you know, massive scale cultural exchange happening all the time. Those ways of thinking were just like really not, they were almost unavailable to me. So that was part of it. The biggest part of it, though, was that I was into other stuff, you know, like I wanted, you know, I was into dating. I was into interpersonal life stuff. You know, it was the first time in my life when I'd had close friends, at least since I was a little kid. And so I really reveled in that. And then also, like, I you know, I was kind of a self-destructive, troubled kid. and some of that, I look back on it now and I think like, well, I feel much more forgiving toward myself because I now understand that, that kid was like living with trauma that he had no way of processing. And, and at that point in your life, I'm sure there are people watching this who are in high school, and I mean, you may not feel this way, but I look back on that time in my life and I think about all the times that people would say to me like, oh, these are the best years of your life. Like, what a ridiculous notion that those are the best years of your life. Like, they're so difficult. And you're so, and I'm sure for some people it is the best years of their life, but like for me, everything was so intense and overwhelming, and the things that were scary were unbelievably scary, and the things that were exciting were unbelievably exciting, and I did not have agency, in important, really critically important parts of my life. I did not have agency. And that is hard. It's hard and can be very painful when you know that there are people who can decide what happens to you more than you decide what happens to you. And of course, like, I know you never really have agency, but in high school, at least for me, I was made to be acutely aware of it over and over again. So those were all factors. But I had really good teachers and they believed in me. And I mean, that's another thing I think about all the time is that if I hadn't, like, I gave my teachers in high school absolutely no reason to think that I was anything other than a screw up. I skipped class. I, drank too much. I smoked cigarettes. I was not a good presence in the classroom a lot of times. But they did not give up on me. And it would have been very easy too. And I think in a lot of other situations, kids like the kid I was don't keep getting second chances. And yeah, I mean, that's something that I think about a lot, because I benefited so much from these power structures that were invisible to me, but that meant that I had a chance to overcome, the things that were a problem for me. And by the time I got to college, like, I think really I woke up toward the end of my junior year of high school. I woke up a little bit and I realized that education was not like a punishment being enforced upon me by untrustworthy grown-ups. But I mean, it was that to an extent, but it was also an opportunity. It was also an opportunity to understand myself and my place in the world better. And it wasn't just about, getting grades or writing papers. It was also about, how am I going to interact with other people? How am I going to be more compassionate? How am I going to make more aware that other people's lives are as real and as important as my own? Like, what are the things that I need to do to start to better grapple with the universe and the people I share the planet with? And when I started thinking about education that way, and when I started to be able to like choose my own classes and stuff, I became a pretty good student. And by the time I graduated from college, I was, wasn't a great student. I didn't get into the advanced creative writing class at my college, but I was a good enough student. I was on the road. I had learned how to learn, and I liked learning. I was enthusiastic about it, and I still am. Like, it's the thing that in some ways, it's kind of the thing that gets me up and out of bed in the morning, is thinking like, oh, I bet I'm going to learn something today. Now, this pen is already, and this is like, I don't know, 250 sheets. This pen is already starting to annoy me. It's already starting to be a problem. There's feathering, a word I just learned 30 seconds ago that I'm going to be using constantly now. There's extensive feathering already. And the parts that aren't feathered, so now I have to choose between having a feathered signature, where the line is inconsistent and changes throughout the line, or having a signature that, in my opinion, is just much too like dark. Like this one is like it's too dark, and like the lines are too big. It looks fake, and I just don't like it. The line is too wide, and it looks the width gets all messed up, and then like once it's messed up, I can't fix it. You know, like I can't, and so you end up like sometimes you can fix it by moving the cap around, because that actually changes like the angle at which you're holding the pen a little bit, but you can't fix it all the way. I don't know. I don't love it. And this is only after like 300, maybe even 250. I don't even know. So like that signature is so bad, it's humiliating. I'm gonna put a spiral there to try to cheer this person up as an apology for the fact that they got the worst signature I've ever signed in my entire life. That one is not much better. Got to get back in the groove, guys. I got to stop thinking about how much I hate the blue pen after 250 signatures. Stop worrying about feathering and just go back to my unlovely, extremely repetitive signature. I'm telling you, this pen is almost cooked after just 300 signatures. I don't know if you can hear that upstairs, but that's a hoverboard. The whole time I was writing the Anthropocene Reviewed book, my number one soundtrack was that hoverboard. But yeah, this book will come out on May 18th, hopefully, assuming I sign all of these in time, and it'll be available for pre-order. It's available for pre-order now, and it'll come to your house on May 18th. Order it if you can. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life, but if you can order it in a way that supports your local bookstore, that's great. Either contacting your local bookstore directly, or you can go to bookshop.org. That's how we get most of our books these days. It's super easy and really great. And I actually think it might be cheaper at bookshop.org than it is at that other place that we won't talk about anyway. Yeah. So I hope that you like it. And if you don't want to buy the Anthropocene Reviewed book, that's fine too. I won't take that personally at all. You can listen to the Anthropocene Reviewed podcast for free wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, whatever. They're all there. And if you're interested in the Anthropocene Reviewed but you don't want to shell out the money, that's no worries. It'll also be available at your local library, hopefully. So that'll be another way to get it for free. All right. I'm finally back in the groove here. I'm telling you, this pen is really bumming me out. It's having a distinct effect on my mood. I don't think I can do it anymore. It's hideous. All right, one more just to prove my point. Oh, that one actually looks quite good. Yeah. All right, so this will prove my point. This is like less than here. I'll compare the two. I realize that I sound like it. I mean, these are very different size stacks, okay? But we're already getting the feathering, the inconsistency in the lines, and it's just it's a real, I was going to say it's a real problem, but of course it isn't. It isn't anything like a real problem. It's the least real problem imaginable, but it's my problem. And it's just a reminder that like when you have a problem, it's your problem. Will it be available in Arabic? I don't know yet. I always assumed 2 pages were exclusively used in bookbinding. How's a single page get bound into the book? Oh, I'm so glad you asked, Ian. That's one of my number one interests. Okay. All right. Do your hands ever cramp up? Those are great. Okay. Can we talk about how Americans wear shoes inside? I mean, I wasn't going to wear shoes. Actually, I only put on shoes for the live stream. I'm not sure if that makes it more weird or less weird. My mom got vaccinated today, guys, by the way, which is great news. That might have been a HIPAA violation. Yeah, so I only wore shoes because I didn't want to just have socks on during the show. What's the TikTok meme? No free feet pics? I don't know. I just put on shoes for this. But it is weird that Americans wear shoes inside. And I am an American, and I am very weird. I just love being back to green. It's right where I belong. So how do these pages get bound in? So first off, you can see, I'll just show you here. You can see here, there's like all these boxes. Those boxes are boxes that are full of sheets. There's like 85,000 sheets in those boxes combined. And those, I think, is that the right angle? About, it'll do. So those get sent to Pennsylvania, where the books are bound. Sometimes now books are made in Germany, or they're made in Korea or in China, but my books are printed in the United States. And at the printer, you're right that very commonly there's what's called a signature, which is like 8 or 16 pages that sort of get bound together. And then the signatures come together, and all together they make up the book. At least for a hardcover book, that's usually how it's done. So that's why sometimes at the end of especially hardcover books, but also sometimes paperback books, you'll see that there are like a couple blank pages, or you'll see that like there's a little more front matter than seems totally necessary. Like, why are there 3 title pages? And a lot of times there's 3 title pages because they needed an extra signature to get all of the text of the book into the book. But then they've got like 6 pages left over, and they're like, what are we going to do with these 6 pages? Well, we got to spread them out somehow so that people don't notice that there's 6 extra pages. So there'll be like a couple pages at the back. Maybe there'll be like a page between the ending of the book and the about the author, and maybe there will be like another page before, like, don't miss out on these other hit books by Hank Green or whatever. So that is how book binding usually works for hardcover books. I'm not an expert in this, by the way, so I might be getting some of the granular stuff wrong, and I apologize if I do. But this is something that I find interesting, and like I find like beautifully made physical books to be such a wonder. They're the thing I collect. I don't think of myself as collecting them, but then I look at my house and I realize that this is the thing I collect, and that I do care about the object, even though I know that, of course, the words in the book matter infinitely more and everything. Like, I love a beautiful book package. So the way that this works is the people in Pennsylvania, a couple of whom I've met and talked to about this, they unbox these sheets, they put them in a gigantic machine, a few thousand at a time. They make sure that they try to make sure that I didn't sign any upside down. This is a huge problem. So the 2 things that happen pretty commonly when authors sign tip-in sheets is, 1, authors sign upside down, and 2, authors will grab 2 pieces of paper and sign and think that they're done. And that means that somebody doesn't get a signed book. So if you're wondering, if you're thinking to yourself like, oh, this would go a lot faster if John held his hand like this and did this each time instead of this way, because there is like an extra second or so in this. You're right, it would go faster. The problem is I wouldn't be able, if I don't put one finger on each side of the paper, I can't. I feel like this is a tutorial in how to do something that no one else is ever going to have to do, but whatever. Here we are. You can leave the live stream if you want. I won't take it personally. But so I have to feel it to know that it's just one piece of paper, not two. So I feel it. It's one piece of paper, and I can put it there, and I can know that like I'm not having any extra sheets, which just it's a peace of mind thing. But also, like, it does happen that you put two sheets together and then somebody's like, oh, my signed book isn't signed. And I'm sure in the course of 250,000 sheets, that's going to happen a few times anyway. But I would like to minimize the number of times it happens. So they take out the sheets. They take a look at them to make sure that they're all signed in the same direction. The way you see that they're all signed in the same direction is you see that blue line. There's a blue line right at the bottom of the page, and it's almost invisible for each page, but if you look at like the whole section, you can see the blue line, and that's your down. That's how you know where your down is. And then they like clip the pages to make them the right size. So they clip off a little at the bottom, a little at the top, and a tiny bit of the left and right. And then it feeds into a machine that does what's called tipping in. It tips these sheets into the books as they're being bound one by one. So there's a little machine that goes and it tips it in, and it glues it in on the edge. So it's not bound in with the signatures. It's glued in against the end paper. And that's how this is done. It's a really cool process, and it was actually pretty uncommon to do it in any kind of like large scale way until about 10 years ago, because it used to be a lot more expensive and time consuming to do it. And so the printers and publishers would often be like, let's just wait until the books get in the warehouse, and then if we want the author to sign 5,000 copies, we'll just send the author to the warehouse and they can sign the 5,000 copies there. And for me, actually, like I like doing that. I've done that before and I like it. It's a chance to see the place where your book gets stored and sent out from, and meet the people who work in that side of publishing. And it's also just a cool chance to sign a bunch of books. This is easier because I can be at home, I can go a little faster, I can do it on my own time, I can do it at night, on the weekends, etc. And so that's the advantage of it. The first time I did it was in 2010 when a book I co-wrote with my friend David Levithan was published called Will Grayson, Will Grayson. And I think David and I signed like 2,000 sheets. And then it was only about a year later that I was finishing The Fault in Our Stars. And I actually just came across, Rosianna just sent me the first email I sent my publisher, Julie Strauss Gable, about doing this. And I was like, I think it'll just be better, because she was like, do you want to sign tip-in sheets again? And I was like, yeah, it's not a problem. It's pretty easy, and I don't mind the work. And she said, well, how many do you want to sign? And I was like, I don't know. I'll just sign however many you guys are going to print. I'm not stressed out about it. And she was like, because I just thought that what I said in the email is, I think narratively it'll be better if we can just answer the question, how do I get a signed copy, with the answer, all copies will be signed. Now, executing that turned out to be way complicated, and a couple thousand people who ordered an international edition of The Fault in Our Stars, who pre-ordered it, did not get signed copies, and then we had to make book plates for those people, and I felt really, really bad because I'd made a promise to them that I didn't keep, which is now why I say that the US and Canadian edition will be signed, because I understand the difference now a little bit better. But anyway, But in that email, I was like, it doesn't matter to me if I'm signing, like 2,000 sheets or 20,000 sheets, because it doesn't take that long and I've got plenty of time. And then it was and then we were living in Amsterdam at the time, actually. So I had a fellowship from the Dutch government to write in Amsterdam, even though part of The Fault in Our Stars is set in Amsterdam, and you would think that would have the fact that we lived in Amsterdam would have deeply informed the book. Not really. I wrote all of the Amsterdam parts, or almost all of them, before we got to Amsterdam. Like, I'd been there before. I knew the city pretty well. But when I was actually in Amsterdam, I was almost exclusively writing about Indianapolis. So, but yeah, so we were flying home from Amsterdam, and I was really sick. I needed my gallbladder out, as it turned out, but I didn't know that at the time. At the time, I just knew that I was really sick. And Julie called me when we landed back in Indianapolis, and she said, it's going to be 150,000 sheets. And I was just like, what the flip and flip? Because, 150,000 was more copies than all of my books had sold combined ever. Let alone in the first printing. But in the process of signing 150,000 times, I learned a lot of important things. And one of the things I learned is that I actually really enjoy this. It's not taxing. I like to think that it will bring some percentage of the people who get a signed copy a little extra moment of pleasure, a little moment of joy, and I also like it. I like it more sometimes than other times, but in general, I like it. This is it is a useful practice for me on a lot of different levels. It helps me internalize a little bit, at least, what these big numbers mean. It also is a form of mindfulness practice, I think. And I like small repetitive actions when I am not forced to do them. Like when I did data entry for 6 years, I didn't love that every day. But when it's a choice, it is fun. It is fun for me. Another thing that I learned is how not to get hurt. Now, this may very well end up being the last time that I do this. At least it probably. Well, you never know. Life is long if you're lucky, but it probably will be the last time I end up doing it on this scale. Certainly, because for a few reasons. One is that this ligament that goes from this bone to this bone on this finger is badly strained, which is really, really painful. And there's just not much that you can do about that. And the things that you can do for it make it hard to sign, so I'm not doing them. And then the other is just that, as I get older, my joints are just a little less nimble. But when I first started doing this for The Fault in Our Stars, I did 15,000, and I was in so much pain every day. My shoulder hurt every day, my hand hurt every day. And so I got physical therapy, and shout out to all the occupational and physical therapists out there. They do incredible work. And the best part about their job to me, or the coolest part about the job to me, is that I went in there and I was like, I have to sign my name 150,000 times. And they didn't act like I was weird. They didn't act like that was strange. They didn't say you shouldn't do that. They said, all right, let's figure out a way for you to do that. And they had me bring in the paper and the Sharpie and the little book that I was using to put the paper on. And I showed them the way that I was signing, and they showed me the ways that I could make it so that, my shoulder wouldn't move so much. And also the ways that I was like really gripping hard on the pen, which was causing a lot of pain in my wrist and in my fingers. And I mean, I must have gone there like 8 or 10 times and sat there for an hour and signed, and just discussed together, like, well, where are the pressure, where are the points where you're putting a lot of force on your hand or on your wrist or your shoulder, and like, how can we get some of the force out of those joints and spread it out more evenly? And ever since then, I mean, I really haven't. It's a bummer to have, have this ligament problem. But as the doctor said when I talked to him about it, he was like, it probably wasn't from signing. It was probably from playing tennis. So, by the way, I don't know if my doctor's here, but he was a very nice guy. I really liked him. It made me, like, you never want to have hand problems, but it made me think, for the rest of my life, if I have a hand problem, I know who I'm going to go to. So that's good. I really liked him. I would just like to point out that this pen is already holding up better than the previous pen. This pen is just a joy to work with. All right, I'm going to be quiet again because my kids are playing piano and I want to listen. Are the new viewers going yet? All right. So I promise this will be the last time I ever make this point on a live stream or elsewhere. But just to prove my point once more, this is more copies than I signed with the entire blue pen. And I mean, is it perfect? No, but like it's still very, very good. That's still excellent, I think. I mean, the signature isn't perfect, but like the quality of the ink is very, very good. So I believe that makes my point. Okay. I'd be listening to a book on tape while signing. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm going to do a little bit more. I didn't realize how late it was. Signing is fun, and I get distracted. Where's the pen? Oh, I thought it was gone forever. I'm just going to finish this out, and then I got to go upstairs and start helping out. But yes, thank you to everybody who's come to the live stream, whether for a minute to find out if this person is just genuinely signing their name over and over again, or for longer. I'm signing my name to be bound into copies of my new book, The Anthropocene Reviewed, my first book of nonfiction. And boy, I hope you like it. It's been a long time. I mean, I was probably this nervous about Turtles All the Way Down, but this is just a whole different thing for me. And yeah, I hope it's good. I hope people like it. I also can't. All I can do is make it as good. All I can do is make it the best book that I know how to make it as, and that's what I've been trying to do for the last year. Trying to figure out a way to take what's good about the podcast or what people have responded to about the podcast and transform that into something that can work on the page. So in that process, written a lot of new essays, I've written a lot of new stuff for old essays, and it's been fun. It's been a fun learning experience. I don't know if I'll ever write another book of nonfiction after this. I don't know if I'll ever I don't know. No idea what I'm going to write after this. I'd like to write another novel someday. I know that, but I never expected that I would be writing a book of extremely in-depth Yelp reviews. Like if you told me that the day Turtles All the Way Down came out, I would have been suitably surprised. But it's been a really wonderful learning practice for me, and a chance to just kind of try to do a different sort of writing. Break out of the whatever self-imposed rules I'd set for myself, or the ideas I had about what my work looked like, and maybe even some about who it was for, and think about that stuff differently, and think about what kind of stuff I want to write about differently. This is the first book I've written that's about me. For me, one of the pleasures of writing fiction is precisely that I'm not writing about myself, even when I'm writing from experiences close to my experience. I'm always very conscious of the fact that I'm writing about different people. I'm writing about people who are a different age than I am. I'm writing about people who have different problems than I have. And that's always been one of the joys of fiction for me, is that sense of, escaping oneself. And one of the reasons I've always liked writing the kinds of books I wrote in the past was because they allowed me to to know that I was writing for an audience and not for myself, because, you know, I wasn't the audience, for lack of a better term. You know, like the audience was quite demographically distant from me, at least at its core. Like lots of grown, I mean, probably most people who read The Fault in Our Stars have been adults, but still it feels like there's a distance for me between me and the characters, and also between, to some extent, between me and the book's life, I guess. But this time around, really for the first time, I am very much writing about myself, and trying to puzzle through the way that I specifically live in the world, and how I might live in the world differently, how I might begin to think differently about consciousness and about Earth and art and lots of other things. So in that sense, it's been like I never thought I wanted to write that way. I always thought I wanted to write primarily for other people, and that was the point of writing. And I did. I mean, I have very much written this for an audience, and like I do want people to read it, and you know, and I do hope that they get something out of it. But it's definitely more about me than anything I made before, which is definitely a little intimidating in its way, but also, you know, in some ways it's a natural outgrowth of making Vlogbrothers for the last 14 years, you know, figuring out the places where I can talk about my life comfortably, and then also accepting and acknowledging the places where, you know, my life needs to stay mine for my mental health, for my sense of well-being, and so on. But there's a lot that, you know, I wanted to write about, I've wanted to write about in the past, or I've tried to write about in the past, that I've tried to find ways into. And in the end, like the only real way for me to find a way into it was through, you know, writing nonfiction and writing about myself and the world as it bumps up against me. So I hope you like the book. It's okay if you don't, though. I won't be mad. I understand. Okay, down to the last few pages here. So that's one half of one box, what I signed during this hour and a half. Like, probably would have gone a little faster if I hadn't been talking, but not that much faster. It's pretty... overall, over time, like I can do 1,000 really fast, but then the next 1,000 are much slower. So over time, the speed it is just the speed it is. And there's not much to do with that except live with it. So, you know, just 340 short hours to go, friends. I'll do another live stream. I'm going to do a live stream tomorrow. It won't be public. It'll be unlisted. But it'll be shortly after my video is uploaded. So I'd love to see some of y'all there. Thank you for being here and hanging out with me while I signed. I hope you're doing okay. All right. Take care. And DFTBA. 10 days till the Project for Awesome.